Good evening. It is 6 o'clock, and I'm going to call this meeting to order. All board members are present. It is the practice of our Board of Education to begin our meetings with prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. We invite you to join in prayer, bow your head and join in prayer, and stand to join us in the pledge if you so choose.
Please bow your head. Lord, we respectfully ask for your guidance and wisdom as we proceed with the business before us. Keep us mindful of our purpose of providing a quality education for the students attending Taylor County schools. Amen.
Are there any adjustments or agendas to the agenda? Addendums. There we go.
Yes, Ms. Garvin, we have two. If you will please remove the word unpaid after item 5600. Page 70 is 11D7.
I'm sorry, give me the item number again, please.
5600. The second item I have for you is further in that series, 5000 series 5712. Last item. Actually, we're removing that completely. That's being pulled tonight. Those are all the things that need to be adjusted. Thank you.
Thank you. Scrolling back up to the top. Here we go. The superintendent respectfully requests approval of the agenda as amended. Mr. Dowdy moves.
Second.
Mr. Taylor seconds. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Brings us to the 1000 series. We do have two delegations. However, our first presenter in the 1000 series has quite the drive this evening, so we beg your indulgence while we let him go first. Mr. Schreiber, or Mr. Martin? Sorry.
Good evening. I'm here tonight to present to you some of your upcoming renovation project at Taylor County Transportation Building. In the month of April, I believe we were approved to come and do some drafting services to come up to measure the existing building after you guys have made the purchase. As we were reviewing the building, we were part of that to generate a floor plan. We were reviewing the layout of the building and some of the configurations to make sure it's up to standards, up to codes. So with that, we did have some options to present to Dr. Stallings and Dr. Decker, along with meeting with the transportation and maintenance on there. So I've got a small presentation to kind of show you where the building currently is in the situation or in the position that it is, and then what we're planning for the future. So the first item, we only have one TV tonight, so we have it all on one screen. So this is the existing floor plan as it sits today. So we have on the right-hand side, the main first floor. You come in the front of the building, kind of this open lobby. There are some existing offices, all in appropriate sizes spread across the front. On the left-hand side, we have a kitchen. In the middle, there's this conference area. On the right-hand side, there's two male-female toilets in that general area, along with kind of a little nook. And then as we separate from the front of the building, which is a lower volume, to the back of the building, there's an area kind of that will be set up for parts, a small parts office, a foyer for side entrance, and an office. And then in the back area is the garage, the intended garage. Currently, there are multiple garage door entrances on the side with one on the back. Our discussions with the staff is they'd like to have a different configuration to allow better usage of that site. When we were reviewing this, we did not see any major issues with the exception of the size of the toilets on the front of the building. As you see, if you can read that dimension on the right-hand side, the current distance from wall to wall inside that bathroom is 4'10", so it does not allow for the 5-foot turning radius that is generally required for ADA accessibility. So we started looking at, if we were renovating this building, kind of a phase one, talk about the building first, and then phase two would be more of the site. So phase one, let me see if I can get to, there we go. Phase one, we would be looking at more focusing on that right-hand side to where we would take the existing 2 toilets and that small little alcove and cutting up the floor, reusing the piping and the sanitation pipe underneath, and position 2 new toilets in that area, one designated male, one female, both unisex, either or. But it would be able to be large enough to accommodate ADA accessibility. And then in that other location, that was just kind of an alcove, go ahead and create a janitorial closet in that space. So you'd have a mop sink, somewhere to be able to clean things, keep your products close by to your sanitation. In our other discussions, some of the things we were talking about, we wanted to add a new door connecting from the break room to the conference room, do some floor finish improvement outside of the toilet in that conference room, remove a little recess that was kind of maybe a parts window at one point, so we take that out, square up the conference room to be able to provide a little bit bigger area. That door would allow access for your staff to be able to easily get to the kitchen without walking out and around, have a quick access there. And then other part towards the front, to be able to access the second floor of the unfinished space from the outside, we're looking at adding a set of stairs and a door to the upper level so that we could come up on the outside of the building, get to that unfinished space, be able to utilize that for maintenance and or parts that could be easily stored at a higher elevation off ground level. As we progress our way to the back, there is this office area here. There's a large opening window. We're talking about enclosing that so we can create a separate office for the maintenance and or transportation. And then on the back of the building, kind of hard to see up here, the existing door centered, and to be able to utilize this whole back area, we talked, and the approach is to put another 12-foot by 12-foot door here and another 12-foot by 12-foot door here. The existing 2, we would block them up so it'd have better use of the full wall, but this would allow these right 2 would allow for a bus to fully pull into this space and be able to close the door so they can work on the full-size buses in the right 2 bays. And then on the left bay, if you had a smaller bus or a standard vehicle that could be serviced, it could be pulled into the left-hand bay and still have enough room to be able to work. One of the other requests was to be able to get an access from the garage area into this parts area that will be utilized by transportation. So we were talking about creating a large opening that we could get one of their smaller forklifts from front to back if they're bringing in a lot of equipment, but also being able to separate it to keep dust down from space to space. Currently, this is a masonry load-bearing wall. So as part of that, we would have a structural engineer come and evaluate to make sure what we're putting back can be accommodated, which I feel that it would not be an issue to do that. So this is part of the phase 1. We're not doing much to the front of the office outside of just cosmetic cleanup. So at this point, we're trying to keep your renovation scope down to a minimal to the right-hand side, get a couple doors in the back, close off that to be able to get the use of this transportation building that you recently acquired. Any questions about the interior portion at this time? Yep.
So on the garage part, and you guys can help me out. I thought you guys were looking at having one side where the bus pulls in, having the other side, so they just pull in and pull out. They don't back up. That's not what you're looking at any longer.
Based on the clearances on the site, to be able to get a large bus in, come across, and a large bus out, be able to turn the radiuses to get outside. So you're kind of limited on the existing site, the gravel area.
Pull in, back out on
Yep.
the backside.
Yep. And the only people that will be there will be your transportation, your buses. So it's not like you're having students on the bus. It'll just be the bus drivers and your maintenance people. And this will allow you to, again, these two bays right here will allow you to bring a full bus all the way in, close the door, and I believe you guys were able to put a stepladder or something behind it if you had to service it while the doors were closed. You can put two side by side if we put in the second door. So, yeah, right now, there's only the single door in the middle, so we're proposing to put in a left door and a right. And they could pull in two with a man door separating the two.
I was just questioning, because I thought in our mind we were.
Drive-through.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So unfortunately, the drive-through approach doesn't work with turning radiuses.
All right, I have an additional question too, and a gentle reminder to use your microphone.
Okay.
That's okay. Can we, since we're moving those two doors, are they reusable? Does that gain us anything?
We would have to do a further evaluation of the condition of those doors
Okay,
to see if they were truly salvageable.
Okay.
They have been used many times. The gears may not be in the best shape, and you may have your better approach is get new product.
and that's fine. I just want to make sure that we're evaluating that
Right.
properly. And you mentioned the turning radius as an issue, and so I'm curious because we had, you'll probably answer this in a minute, we had talked about putting the tanks behind. Does that create an issue?
So we've got that covered in phase 2.
Delightful, carry on.
I believe you had a question?
Mine is more for your female bus drivers, working moms. I know we recently just updated a policy for lactating mothers. I just wanted to know if there's any space there that is going to be provided for that.
At this point, well, that was not a discussed item.
Okay.
But an office, one of the internal offices, if need be, could be adjusted to be one of those.
Be dedicated for that.
Okay,
We were
just
looking
wanted to
more of the-
advocate for them
Right,
for
we were
that.
looking more at the ADA compliant toilets, because if you're using it for both male, female, and or
Mhm.
anybody coming into the building, they need to have at least ADA compliant, whether it's one use or two. We decided to go ahead and focus to get both of them up to standards.
Okay, but then the office space would
An
be for
office
the
space,
mother.
yep.
Yeah, because
And that would
don't want
just
to
be
do that
a-
in the restroom.
Right. Any other questions on phase 1? So now the other one is phase 2, which is talking about the site. And now the site plan is more oriented to how it sits currently. So the front of the building is located up towards Route 50 here, the back of the building, as you know, toward the back. Where we're placing the 2 new garage doors will be along this back area here. So last week, we talked with Dr. Stallings and Mr. Dolan and a couple vendors. Got some information about sizes of tanks, both propane, diesel, and gasoline. Got clearances that we were, minimum clearances for us to have. And our approach is to, once we have done a thorough site investigation, which is part of our proposal at this time, is to propose that we put the tanks back on this back part of the property, so that we have proper distance from gasoline to propane, but gasoline and diesel can be close. Put them on a single island themselves, get them elevated up after everything has been tested. All this hatched area in white, it would be gravel as needed to make sure that we provide enough space and enough compacted area so that a tanker truck could be back there to deliver your propane and or your gasoline. The green area and or possibly retaining wall would, depending on how much would be worked once we do that site investigation, because I know there is a little bit of a slope starting kind of, as you see on the existing site right here, it slopes up some. Until we do a survey and a geotechnical investigation, we're kind of planning what worst case scenario would be. Then, on the side of the building, this is the location we are proposing that we put the 2 pumps in a island. So we'd have a pump that would be dedicated for propane. We'd have a pump that would hopefully be dual use for gasoline and diesel. They have a minimum separation per requirements. They would then have underground piping under all of this back to these tanks so that buses could be driving left and right on this to access either side as they're coming or going. And then this provides them the turning radius to come in and get in the back of the building, along with the backup clearances. We're setting about 80 feet to the concrete pad. That's what's shown at this location here. So this is an 80-foot area for a bus to back up. Your typical buses are 40, so this is nearly double the size of what you need to be able to back up a bus. We do have an existing septic tank, I believe a camper is sitting over top of, so we need to be aware of that, so we don't want to place anything too far. And then as we're doing some site survey, site investigation, we'll make sure that we have proper coverage over that sanitation line out to the septic system, so the buses don't compress that or compact that and cause issues. So I'll open the floor to questions for phase 2.
How many buses can be parked there? Do we know, or an estimate? Ballpark? Yeah.
We anticipate we could park all there if we need, if need be. We have 40 buses. That's including the spares. And if need be, we're hoping we can park all of them.
Now, parking would be closer to the front, from the front of the building towards Route 50.
Yeah.
Within the gated area.
Yeah.
So to answer on the mic so that he can be heard by, it would be that we anticipate we have space for all 40 buses should we need that, including the replacement buses. I want to repeat that correctly.
40 buses, we have 40 buses total in the fleet.
40 buses total in the fleet.
And 32 are regular routes.
32 currently regular route
That gives us
usage.
spare buses.
8 spare buses. So it gives you, I just want to make sure the public hears all that.
Understood.
So, question.
Yep.
Remember, there's no question is a stupid question, okay? Buses will be pulling in up here to the left and filling up both sides.
So buses can be going both directions that way. So you could have buses, if they feel more comfortable and it's agreed by bus transportation, they could come in on the upper side, curve around, or if they're better at coming in on the left side, turning in. I'm not sure bus's preference.
So two buses can be, one bus
Yep.
can be here, one bus can be here.
Correct.
So what about here?
There,
It says
so this back area, I don't anticipate anybody really being back here unless you have to park, because we have the fueling tank. This will be the area that the tankers will be coming into,
That
back
was my
into
question.
for delivering.
So the filling station is for the tankers, not not the buses will always be
The
over
buses
here?
will use the fuel island. This
Okay.
area back here
That's what I
will be set up for delivery of propane on your normal schedule.
I wanted to make sure,
So,
because
and if there is vehicles there when they're delivering, then they can be coordinated. We're coming, to schedule them every Tuesday at whatever time.
okay,
It can be relocated.
yeah, because that's what I thought, but I wasn't sure with the filling station little text there.
So Mrs. Knotts,
We wanted the buses to be able to pull in as easy as we could
Right.
and get them, so that's
So
great,
that's why
that's
the
great.
island is off to the side, allows buses to come both directions right here.
Okay,
This way and or that way. They can access the pump like you would on a normal gas station, vehicular.
okay.
Okay.
Are we going to do paint in there too? We're going to do fresh paint inside the front offices? Any fresh paint?
it'll be an eventual phase. We just want to be structurally prepared first, but you're right.
So I believe you have in front of you, or maybe there hasn't been passed out, but there is a proposal for architectural services associated with this project. We are separating it in two because we feel that we can get the phase one portion accomplished sooner than we can get the survey, the geotechnical investigation and everything taken care of. So that will take a little bit longer to do to get all that information. So that is, I'm not sure if that's in front of the board tonight or not.
Don't believe we've seen that
Okay.
yet.
Just want to make sure the initial presentation was done. Thank you.
Are you gonna share a price or a cost or an investment with us?
Do we have the we don't have a complete dollar amount yet.
At this point, we have a proposal for architectural services, but We also have a proposal for survey geotechnical, which will help us understand the tail end, or the actual cost of the stuff associated with the site.
I'm just concerned. I'm hoping we didn't. I still think we're all right. But I'm not fearing, reassure me that I'm not fearing the worst here, that we've made an investment and this is going to be way more of a cost than we're anticipating to get this ready. Or you don't know?
Reassure you,
Yeah, can you do that?
remember to breathe.
Okay.
Tanks are going to be pricey. I will say that to you. Purchasing tanks are going to be pricey.
No, I
No,
understand
that-
that
we knew
part.
that.
I'm
That part
talking
will be
about the
pricey.
Renovation
the
scope.
renovations and everything like that. We already discussed the tank
Yeah.
costs in the past, so
No.
I'm fully aware
That'll
of
be the
that.
most
And then the removal of the others, we know that price
Right,
too.
those things we knew were,
Yeah,
before
we
we
knew.
got into this at all.
Right, but the renovations with moving the doors and all of that, some of this other stuff, retaining wall, and
And the retaining wall is part of the site work, so
Yeah.
it's associated with the tanks, because as we were looking at the tanks and calculating the weights of those tanks, we want to make sure the tanks don't sink later. Because they are, once you start calculating up gallons, 8 pounds per gallon, how many gallons we have, how much weight is there. It's a substantial amount of weight, so that's part of that geotechnical investigation, the survey, to make sure that that area we are proposing will work. Now, if that area comes back and says it's too costly, then we'll come back and present an option. The other option would be some other location on site, but we want to be aware that we want to avoid that existing septic tank and any passing of that, but trying to keep everything further away from Route 50, and there are some setback limitations associated with the tank themselves, property lines, clearances like that.
okay.
I still believe it was a wise purchase. You'll
Okay.
be fine, I believe.
You know, that was my concern when we went into this.
Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to give full support on the needs of what our county is looking for and what we had, what we needed. But remember, I was afraid of those invisible costs that we might get into down the road. So that's my fear.
How far back could the island be put back this way instead of right there where you have it at the corner of that building?
How far
Forward,
Towards the bank, towards the back
Back,
area.
away from
further
it.
into the turning radius, so it'd go back into, when we lay this out, a turning radius of a bus, if you're coming from Route 50 on the right-hand side, what does a bus need with that island to get around everything while still staying in the travel path?
You say there's 80 feet from the corner of the back of the building to,
So right now, there is from this corner to this edge of concrete pad, which is equal to the same there, is 80 feet. But my question is, a bus, you're talking about taking this, shifting it further back, correct?
correct,
So my question would be a bus turning on this outer side to make sure that we don't pinch it too much, because there is a little bit of a swell on that side, if I remember. So there may be like a ditch or some natural swell with water, so we don't want to make sure we give enough clearance.
turn at like an angle, so where they're coming in there and kind of.
We could. So this is a preliminary layout, nothing set final.
We like it where it's setting right now. Are we open for discussion?
Not at this point. I think that we can take these ideas, write them down. Let's set up a separate meeting to say, we feel strongly about this, because I don't know that everybody here needs to be involved in the minutia of the distance on the gas pump. You have, yeah,
we'll schedule a time to do that.
okay. Do you have anything else for us tonight, Mr. Martin?
Follow up on a couple projects. I drove by Anna Jarvis on my way up here. It's looking great. City Construction's making good progress. And then the Flemington project, we had a pre-construction meeting today, a virtual meeting that allowed the contractor to kick off. So that project will start on its way as well.
Wonderful. We're glad we can keep you busy.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
All right. You guys have a good evening. Thank you.
You too. Drive safely. We
Have safe
appreciate your
travel
time this
home.
evening. All right, we do have 2 delegations this evening. I will remind our delegations that there is a 5-minute time limit. You are being live streamed, and you can talk to us, but we can't talk back. So, the father-son tournament, Robert Mara? Okay, very good. And Terry Cole. Gentlemen? And the microphone is turned on, so you should be all set.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening. Appreciate letting us speak tonight. My name is Robert Marr, and this is Terry Cole. We have another partner in our organization, Father and Son Tournaments, Paul Paulson. He's not here with us tonight. He's traveling. But I know we're on the agenda tonight to use Grafton High School's baseball field. And so we just wanted to come show up and at least see our faces. You know, we're local, live in Bridgeport, but we've been doing this for 8 years, running the tournaments under Father and Son Tournaments. And we've used and worked with City of Bridgeport, City of Clarksburg, with Frank Loria Field, Milan Park, folks in Glenville. So we're, you know, familiar with working with various sites and their fields, and you know, trying to take care of them as if they're ours. You know, we have many teams that come to the tournaments and bring in a lot of economic impact to the areas. You know, whether it's restaurants, whether it's gas stations, et cetera, shopping, whatever the case may be, convenience stores, it doesn't matter. You know, these people are here to play baseball, but also they're bringing their family. So anyway, so we're trying to, one of our goals is to try to play more on turf fields, because that's where everybody wants to come in and play on turf. You know, obviously baseball, everybody knows what happened this past weekend. We had a lot of rain. If we didn't have turf fields, we'd have been done. So that's kind of what we're looking at. I've spoken, I know Terry has as well, with John Goose, and you know, I know that their team, they have a team that plays, and you know, I know they'd be interested in obviously playing at Grafton High School as well as running the concession stand and that type of thing. And obviously, you know, they get the impact of that. So hopefully, you know, you guys will, you know, think positively of that. And obviously, I know you don't want to make any comments, but if you do have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer. If there's anything I left out, and I'll let Terry, I may have forgot something, so I'll let Terry speak.
It's kind of come full circle for me. I was a coach at Grafton High School baseball 25 years ago.
I was gonna say,
I think I got hired when I was 15, so. But yeah, I know how valuable the money is that can be generated through these tournaments. And so that's what we're trying to do. So please reach out if you have any questions. We'd be happy to answer those. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Everybody have a good evening.
Thank
you,
you.
gentlemen.
Appreciate your time, gentlemen.
Thought I recognized Mr. Cole from before.
Yeah, I mean, we may have questions when we get to the item.
Right. Okay, we have an additional delegation, which I believe is Bethany Knight on behalf of the AJ Faculty Senate.
I'd like to thank the board members for their time this evening, but I also want to draw attention to the severity of need since I am once again standing in front of you speaking about the need of a dean of students at Anna Jarvis. At the last meeting, members deliberated between another counselor or dean position. I feel that the dean position is what is in our best interest. I am on the hiring committee at Anna Jarvis, and over the past years, I personally have sat in on interviews to hire additional counselors. Often, we have no qualified applicants bid on the position, and on the rare occasion that a qualified applicant bids, we offer them the position, but unfortunately, they resign for other offers. The Dean of Students position is listed as a teaching position, which inevitably opens a larger pool of applicants. Another item of discussion at the last meeting was whether the school resource officer, a new position for the 25-26 school year at AJ, could alleviate some of the caseload that the administration has. I am not an expert on policy, but every article in the policy that I have read is extremely clear that an SRR's role is non-disciplinarian. They may mentor, help prevent instances around school grounds, and become a comforting force or face that students may see who would see police presence as a negative. I'm incredibly grateful of the addition of this position, but an SRO officer cannot do the work of a dean of students. On May 13th, I stated that Anna Jarvis served 480 students. To date, our administrative team had entered 263 behaviors into WEVIS. We are drowning in behaviors that are making teaching anxiety-filled for both teachers and students. Our Dean of Students position developed and implemented behavior plans, fostered social-emotional skills, and managed in-school suspensions, just to name a few of the key duties. I understand that the data Dr. Stallings may have may show that there was neither a positive or a negative effect during the duration of the time with the Dean of Students, but as a staff, we felt the positive impact. The Dean of Students served as a bridge between administration, faculty, and students. The success of our school depends on maintaining a climate where students feel motivated to learn and educators feel empowered to teach. A Dean of Students is an essential investment and one that can cultivate stability, enhance student success, and alleviate concerns placed on school staff and faculty alike. I know that we are not on the agenda this evening for discussion, but I am more than happy to speak to anyone at any time concerning this. I hope you see my face as realizing that this is a true need at Anna Jarvis. As much fun as you all are, this is not the best way I want to spend my Tuesday evenings. So I appreciate your time and welcome to speak to any of you at any point in time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will continue moving on in the 1000 series with the superintendent's updates.
Thank you, Ms. Garvin. I did pass out, as I mentioned during our discussion earlier with my evaluation, that you have in front of you a packet of each of our schools' representations of their end-of-year updates. In addition, we have with us both Mrs. Roberts and Ms. Fisher, who are prepared to share with you some specifics that they've gathered. So I'll bring them to the table first, please, or to the podium first.
They're at the table. Let's bring them
Excuse
away
me, they're
from
at the table. We'll invite them to the podium. Thank you for that clarification.
So I'm sharing with you some iReady data. Just to refresh your memory, iReady is given to all of our K-8 students 3 times throughout the school year. That is our state-approved screener, and it assesses reading and math skills. So that first page of your packet that I just provided, this is actually our reading data for this year. I pulled the comparison of end of the year. You'll see it referenced as EOI, and middle of the year MOI data. And just to remind you, green means that the students are at or above grade level. Yellow means they're a grade level below, and then red means they're 2 or more grade levels below. So the first piece of data listed there is Anna Jarvis's, and like I said, this is a comparison between end of the year, so you'll see that first bar graph is end of the year, and the second bar graph is middle of the year. And I wanted to share this particular view with you because I'm a visual person, so it gives that visual representation that you can see growth. Obviously, when our green getting larger and our red getting smaller, so that's a good representation, but it's also so that you can see the percentages. So you can see that from middle of the year, they went from 40% at or above grade level to 62% at the end of the year. I provided the same information for Flemington, and once again, you can see they had growth as well. They went from 38% a middle of the year proficiency to 54% proficiency at Flemington. If you turn to the next page is West Taylor's. As well, they grew as well. They went from 67% proficient, if you look at both above and on grade level, to 81% students. And keep in mind, this is a representation of students kindergarten through 4th grade for these students. And then we have the middle school data. Once again, these students grew as well. They went from 30% at or above grade level to 40% at or above grade level. And we saw a slight decline in the percentage of students, the red, that are 2 grade levels or below. And the last piece of data on that page is our district data. So this is a combination of all of our schools' K-8 students. And you can see there from middle of the year, it was at 40% students at or above grade level, and it grew to 54%. And our students 2 or more grade levels below decreased from 30 down to 24%. The next page is a little bit more reading data at the district level. And we've spoke about this before, how when we look at the, whether it's reading or math, the data we get is broken up into domains or areas. And so I wanted to kind of share with you some of by the domain, so you can see specifically how the students are performing. So once again, this is district data, so we're looking at all of our schools and all of our grade levels. You can see there that first graph shows the domains on the the left-hand side. Phonological awareness, you'll notice that there's a lot of gray area there. Phonological awareness is something that our students test out of. So once they're past 2nd grade, they no longer are assessed on phonological awareness, because that is, can our students identify the sounds they hear, manipulate those sounds? So that's something that's no longer assessed. But out of the students that were assessed, you can see a majority of them are at or above grade level. This first chart is a comparison between middle of the year to the end of the year. But I wanted to give you the chart below, which is actually the proficiency level by domain. We've spent a lot of time this year focusing on phonics. I've spoke before about the science of reading and the support that the state has provided to us and the districts providing to the schools. And so phonics has been a major focus this year. Some of our schools are utilizing the UFly program that really zones in on phonics, and then in the other schools using Saxon. And so I really wanted to point that out. You can see at the end of the year, we had 81% of our students that are proficient in phonics. And as we spoke before, that's a foundational skill. So, that's wonderful that our students are really showing proficiency there. High frequency words is another area that we've been focusing on. Traditionally, we used to call that sight words. Wanting our students to know these words by sight, not having to decode them. High frequency means we're just focusing on the words that the students see most often in print. So that has been another area that has been a major focus, and 81% of the students, 89% of the students showed proficiency at the end of the year diagnostic. So questions about the reading before we take a look at the math? I know I shared a lot of information with you.
And this is all subgroups included?
Correct. Mm-hmm. With our iReady, unfortunately, we can't pull out different subgroups besides our schools. We don't have that capability of pulling it out without looking at individual students.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Mm-hmm. Other questions?
So I think I answered my own question before asking, but I'll just kind of share where my thoughts were going. So I was just concerned about the gap there from those that are below grade level at elementary and then going there to middle school. But I guess when you calculate those percents that are in red, it's not that much different. So
Right.
yeah, I
And
just wanted to, of course I know middle school, that's a big transition anyway, and they're growing and things like that, and a lot of probably after school activities starting to get included into their lives. So I just was concerned about the middle school and just making sure that they had the resources they needed to kind of help with those gaps. So
one of the things that the middle school during their analysis of their data and preparing for the strategic plan as well as the district, one of the things that we've really looked at, and they've worked on it this year, and we're going to move forward focusing more, is as you said, sometimes our middle school students, I have a middle schooler at home, attitudes change, they don't always see the importance of taking things seriously. So that is going to continue to be a focus, because if you recall, I think it was probably back in September, October, I shared data that iReady is a good predictor of how our students will do in the WVGSA. So if they're taking the iReady seriously, then we can use that data to see where those skill gaps are and address it, as opposed to waiting to the end of the year when they take that one assessment that one day. This kind of gives us an opportunity to see where they're doing. So that is an area that the middle school is really kind of focusing on, helping students to really see the importance, and also with the staff too, just really kind of understanding how much it really can provide. One thing that we did this year for all of our elementary and middle schools, we had an iReady presenter come in middle of the year, beginning of the year, middle of the year, and actually work with the grade level teachers. And during, it varied when the principal kind of arranged what time, really pinpointing, asking they got a chance to ask their specific questions, and then the trainer was able to really look at their data. And that's something that we're going to do again next year for beginning and middle of the year, because our teachers really found value in that. Several seasoned teachers reached out to me personally and said, hey, this was wonderful. I didn't know what iReady could offer and how we could use that. So that is something that we're hoping to do again next year.
If I can add to that, Ms. Roberts, I've spoken with the building principal this week during their checkout evaluation times, and she too complimented the information that was being brought to the table at the school level, and the fact that she acknowledged several of the staff and student grade levels specifically who seemed to be initially reluctant to see value in the iReady process that we're encouraging, that Helen isn't, I want to give credit to Helen, Mrs. Roberts, but that they have started to embrace that and see much more willingness and benefit from doing so. I just want to give credit to them and the work that she's doing.
I mean, iReady is a time investment because it does take time to complete the middle of the year, or the math and reading diagnostics. So we want to make sure that it's giving us accurate data and we're using that to guide our instruction.
Yeah, I remember when Mrs. T sharing some different interventions that they were trying to implement to really help with that support and that buy-in, with our students and our families to do that already. So thank you.
Any other questions about the reading before we take a look at math? I provided you with very similar charts or data for the math. Once again, we're comparing end of the year to middle of the year, and the key is the same. Green means we're at or above, yellow we're one grade level below, and red 2 or more grade levels below. Provided you with each of the school data, and once again, if you take a look at that, you can see Anna Jarvis in itself, they went from 30% at middle of the year to 60% students at or above grade level in math. So, I mean, that's wonderful, especially considering the amount of time this year because of the weather and the predicted weather that they were out of the classroom. That's wonderful.
That's big medicine.
Yeah. And so Flemington, you can see there, they grew again. At 10%, they went from 37% to 47% proficiency. If you turn to the next page, West Taylor, they were at 43% proficient at middle of the year, and they went to 76% proficiency. And then the middle school, again, they showed growth as well. They went from 27% to 35% proficiency. And then once again, I gave you the district data, which we see there. There was a 20% increase. We went from 30% to 50% proficiency in iReady in all of our schools in grades K to 8. The final sheet, similar to the reading, we look at those domains. So we actually have 4 domains in math: number and operations, algebra and algebraic thinking, measurement and data, and geometry. And you, like I said, there's a visual again for you, but I did put that chart down at the bottom because I do like to see percentages as well. So you can see there that numbers in operation, 52% of students were proficient in algebra and algebraic thinking, were 54% proficiency. Those are two areas that we've really been focusing on this year, is developing, because those are really foundational skills, especially that are hit really hard in K1 and 2. If they have that number sense, that basics, then that's just going to set them up to be to be more successful in upper grades. And so I wanted to also remind you too, this year was our first year implementing our newly adopted math materials. And we're still, this was something that, as we shared last year when we were in this process, there was a lot of time spent, teachers spent a lot of time reviewing the different resources that were available and then casting their vote, and we went with the majority. And we spent a lot of time last year with professional development to try to help teachers be ready to use it, but we're going to go ahead and continue that this year for those teachers, just because, as you know, the first year you get into it, you kind of get a feelers, you see what's available, but sometimes there's more to it. And so once you get in it is when you have those additional questions. So we're going to continue math professional development focus on our new resources. Questions?
Still, math is still a big struggle in our county.
Mm-hmm. It's unfortunately across the state, it's lower than the reading. And I will tell you, Dr. Decker, myself, Mrs. Stead, and our curriculum coordinator, Ms. Morgan Williams, we are attending on Thursday. The State Department is doing a numeracy training. And we're going to go to it and get different information, and we'll come back and share it during with our teachers. We're doing a summer academy again this year, right before school starts, and those will be topics that we'll include in it. And one of them has to do with changing teacher mindset a little bit. I know I come from an elementary background. I taught elementary school, and sometimes as elementary teachers, we kind of go more towards the literacy side because we feel more comfortable and kind of don't focus so much on the math, or we don't feel as confident in the math. So kind of sometimes that's a mind shift change and kind of helping us see we as confident as we are in literacy with math. So, other questions? Thank you.
Thanks, Connie.
Good evening.
Oh, they won't forget.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts. Now we have Ms. Fisher, who's going to speak to us as well, special needs students at Special Ed Department. Thank
Good
you.
evening. So I get to discuss one of those lower subgroups. And in the fall, I'll be able to do some of the subgrouping with some of the iReady and also the GSA data. Okay? So, but tonight's data is about our special needs population. So I just wanted to share a few things with you. Sorry, it's not as pretty as the iReady color, right? But first of all, let's just take a look at our special education population, those students that have an IEP, in the total percentage of them in Taylor County. So we had 444 IEPs as of graduation night. And I'm using that as kind of my end night because then we exit them, okay? So 444 out of 2,105 students, which allows for the population to be at 21%, okay? And that's pre-K through 12. And then I broke it down by the schools. So Anna Jarvis had 31% of a special education population. And I'm gonna give you the other two elementary schools, and then I'm gonna say something. Flemington had 35 students out of 122, or 29%, and West Taylor Elementary had 43 students out of 254, or 17%. Now, I don't know if you remember last year, I kind of broke it down by the exceptionalities. Speech in the lower grades is quite often just an only IEP. It's a primary exceptionality. So if I took speech out of those, it would change your percentages a lot. For example, Anna Jarvis, instead of being 31%, might be around 16%. Okay? So when you also look at it, as we go to Taylor County Middle, now there you still have that mix of primary speech along with your other exceptionalities. So you have 141 students out of 621, or 22%. And then when you go to Grafton High School, you can see that we had 77 students out of 621 and 12%. Now, that didn't mean all of those speech IEPs disappeared, right?
Had a big portion of them.
But you also had students exit, which is one thing that we just love, is that they have finally grasped the strategies that they need to succeed in a gen ed classroom. So we like that. So we average just under 100 all the time at GHS, okay? Any questions about the special ed population compared to the whole Taylor County population? Go ahead.
Slightly bigger than that?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No.
At 21% for our county, how does that compare statewide or nationwide to
That's good.
what is an average?
I'm going to say that we're hovering about average with other counties that are like Taylor County. Those who have like one middle school, one high school, a very small populations, like 3 elementary. So if we looked at those other smaller counties, we're about the same number.
Okay.
I'm not going to try something like Harrison or Kanawha, but I can go find out for you.
I was
You want-
just curious, like,
Yeah,
that number seems large to me.
it does.
So I didn't know, like, are we at a
Can we?
point, evolutionarily speaking, where that's where we're at?
So I've been doing this data for about 3 years. And at first I thought, oh, wow, that's high, right? And there's kind of an ebb and a flow, but we always average between 425 and 450 IEPs every year. So like for this year, interestingly enough, we had something like 9 or 10 children from various states, like Maryland, Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Ohio, come in, and they all had IEPs. So, and that's actually a big influx in the very beginning of the year, right? And we also have students who leave. So they go to other states, or they go to virtual, or they go to homeschool. So we're going to talk about that down at the bottom. But that ebb and flow is always between, like I said, 425 and 450.
Keep in mind also, please, that the county as a whole, that also includes that large percentage of speech and language students.
Speech and language is our largest population. And then you also have to remember that in pre-K, we have developmental delay. And that is between pre-K, now it goes all the way up through 2nd grade. So we're holding on those IEPs a little bit longer than usual. They used to be dismissed after pre-K. So that's going to add to that population. Okay?
So, Ms. Fisher, I had a question. So you mentioned Anna Jarvis and the percentage of speech is the primary exceptionality is, you figured about 16%. Do you have a comparison there with Flemington and West Taylor, what their speech?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
So if we took away just the speech IEPs, the primary exceptionality, you would have Flemington at 17%, and you would have West Taylor at 7%.
So comparably, students to total students, Anna Jarvis, Flemington, right around 1% difference there. Okay.
Commensurate.
Right, and if you really kind of look, so not far, it looks like 31% and that 29%, they're high, right? But then as they leave those speech services, then it really does take it away. But if you're looking at students of other exceptionalities that we're servicing, that number becomes much smaller, and it really kind of hones in with our other numbers, like at the high school.
Thank you for that clarification.
Sure.
If I may, I just want to
Mm-hmm.
double check something. If a student has more than one exceptionality, it's a single IEP, is an IEP per student or per exceptionality?
It's an IEP per student.
Okay,
You have a primary exceptionality, and then you have a secondary exceptionality.
okay.
Okay, and
I just
then
wanted
in
to-
that, that's okay, and in that IEP, there's a service section. And then in that, the services match the various exceptionalities.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I note that there are a number of students that are 2 or more grade levels behind in the reading and math. What portion of those would be our special ed students?
You know, I was working on that today.
Can you get that?
That's a piece of hard data to pull. And I do, instead of a strategic plan, I work with the Office of Special Education, and I do an improvement plan. So I was working on that data today, and that's data that I could probably provide in a couple weeks to you.
Okay.
Because it's pulling it, and then you're looking at some cut scores and doing a lot of calculations.
Yeah, I would be interested in hearing that data and also be interested in hearing remediation plans for those kiddos.
Sure, I can do that for you. Okay, so let's go down to the second part. And this talks about initial evaluations, okay? So these are the percentage of students eligible compared to the total number of students referred. So there is a referral process, and they go through that. And this year, initials were 88, and 80 out of 88 qualified or were 90% eligible. Now, that number kind of looks small, right? You're like 88 referrals and 80 made it, but referrals can be made other ways. So how did we get up to 444, right?
Well,
So as we go through them, teachers can make a referral through speech referral, or if a child has a 504, a referral can be made.
so,
That's how they're,
yeah, I get that,
Yeah.
but,
mm-hmm.
I'm looking here. Those referrals, that number does not include when you screen your preschool or kindergarten students,
Correct.
correct?
So
So those are different numbers.
when we screen them, like we just did in May,
Right,
right? So we'll screen them, and then we flag some,
right.
and then those will become some of our referrals. And they will be initial.
Oh,
Okay.
that number seems small, though.
It does, but that's pretty average. So the reason I chose this particular data is in my end-of-year report to the State Department. So we have the initials, but I can tell you that we had quite a few referrals through the office through 504s and speech IEPs. Oh, and we also have birth to 3.
So when you do your screening, are you telling me that sometimes you flag a lot more than what may end up
Yes.
going into,
I think
This
this year
number on
we
referral?
had just a few that were flagged. So when I say flagged, we look in the various areas of development. And then we have cutoff scores. And we
Right.
just take a look at that. And we just want to see if they have growth or not when they come in September. And then if they're still low, then that will become a referral for an assessment. But if they've grown and they make that cutoff score, then we don't do that referral.
Keep in mind, some of those early assessments that take place with preschoolers,
Or they're-
it's their first exposure
3
to
years
us,
old.
theirs to us, they're
Mhm,
3 and 4
yeah.
years old. And so some of the performances that happen are a little bit cautious because they're a little timid at the same time, so that might be a flagged student with regard to concepts.
yeah,
Only
and-
to find out that when he or she gets into the classroom
right.
and they continue to monitor that, they can say, oh, well, Melissa, it was kind of a false read. We thought she had some
Right.
concerns, but she was just shy.
Yeah.
Right, and being young it's hard, like you said, 3 and 4 years old,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to determine whether that's really gonna be a need for
Correct.
intervention,
Right.
or
That's
if it's
also-
gonna work itself out. right?
Correct, and that's
Because
also,
I've seen some kids with that intervention that it corrects itself,
Mm-hmm.
like you said.
correct.
Yes.
That's
But-
what happens with some of the speech and language students as well. But it's also important to remember that, that by design, unless they have some severe issues, diagnose or recommendations and or identification of any kind of special needs issue sometimes doesn't present as well at that earliest age. That's why you see that kind of that bubble that happens, but like after kindergarten and first grade. Not that we're saying we're not going to do anything until then, but sometimes it doesn't start to actually present itself until about that time.
Right. Another thing that we did this year at our developmental screening was we took out speech first. They used to always be first where all our little ones went, and their shyness was definitely there. So we had them do more of the fun things like the gross motor and the concepts, and maybe even just posing for pictures and talking and getting them warmed up. That's why I feel like we had lower scores, right? So.
So
yeah.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Only because I remember I had a child in this predicament, and I'm sure other parents do as well. How long will you go for speech that you will let the speech try to correct itself before you decide intervention is needed?
So we do speech screenings every September, and then they are also flagged. And then a speech teacher will go back, listen to them one more time, and then proceed with the assessment, with the permission to assess, and then go into that. So it's not, the parent has the right to deny that assessment, but usually they're pretty spot on about articulation and expression. But we get them starting right at pre-K when they come in, and we have a rubric, or the speech therapists do, I don't, but they have that rubric and they follow it so that when they hear different things, they'll know if they're developmentally appropriate or not.
So if a child is in a classroom and their friends are start at second grade or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or first or second grade, and they're not in speech, they're not getting speech services, but their friends are starting to make fun of us, one of their, I don't know all the terms, but how they're speaking or how they're pronouncing words, and would a teacher be able to then look at that and recommend, and would that be something that
So
you
that's
would provide help
that's,
with?
that's our SLPs that, that work with them, and they might go in and do some observations and some listening skills. And the parent also, if the child doesn't qualify educationally for speech, they might want to look outside. Now, we don't always want to do that, but
Right.
if a parent feels strongly that their child needs help, but there's the educational evaluation versus the
Okay,
public.
that's what I'm getting at. So if a parent comes in and says their physician has ordered that they're to receive speech services, you don't want to take them out of school how many days a week or whatever to go get speech services and miss out driving time and back and forth to school, miss out math, reach out, you know what I mean? Language. Miss out normal school topics to take them to an hour of speech or so and then back to school. Wouldn't we step in as a school system and say, if the physician is needing and recommending that this child needs speech, we're going to try to provide that service in school environment so they're not missing school
Only if that
hours?
child qualifies with the educational assessment that's done by the SLP.
I think yes to your question. They would just have to, I mean, it's not like there's a cutoff when you can be referred for something of that nature by any means. That's a part of the whole entitlement process for that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay? Okay, so then one of the next things that we do is we look at our exit data. And our students exit for a variety of reasons, but one of the reasons that I like the best is the graduation. We graduated 19 students out of 139 in that class that you got to watch a couple weeks ago. And that was 22% of that senior class. So I was very proud of them as they walked across the stage, as you were. So that's a big exit data. And just so you know, we do surveys when they exit. We do through the state a one-year exit survey, and we really try to make sure that they're in the job force, you know, or what can we do to help them. So we stay in touch with them and work with them. We try to find out how they're doing.
I want to look at that number again. I'm sorry, this is interesting to me.
Which number? Which one?
I probably should have been a special education teacher.
Come on over. Come on over.
So that 19 out of 139,
Yes.
is that 19 considered this school year
Yes.
in special
The
education?
seniors this school
I would
year.
like to see, I don't know if you can find this out or not,
Okay.
of that 139, how many had received some special education services throughout their entire school year that we followed them and actually
That's a big dig.
graduated?
I-
Go ahead.
I can speak.
Or was that too
I was
hard?
just saying to Ms. Galla that one of the young men who graduated this year was actually my wife's last student. And I'll remind you, she taught preschool special needs 3 to 5-year-olds for her career here. And I was surprised. I forgot that time lapse had been that long since she
Because
retired.
we may have had kids that overcame many different exceptionalities, and some of them may have overcame them in 4th grade or 5th grade or struggled through middle school and overcame. And that could have hindered their graduation possibilities, but they overcame and pushed through, and the teachers and the staff put everything into that child that possibly could, and probably a larger number than 19.
Probably. And I'll tell you
The-
what, with our
yeah,
electronic
you know?
system, it would be hard to dig as much as I would love to, but I think that is
Right.
a great question.
You know, I'm looking at this special ed population up at the top, and it says Grafton High School has a special ed population of 12%, but yet 22% of our graduates were special ed students.
Because I only did the numbers in the senior class.
Okay, but, you know, it seems to me, though, that says we've had significant success
I think
in our
so.
special ed program.
It is. And I think you can even say, going from the middle school to the high school, and you can see the success because the numbers have dropped. We were talking just yesterday of some of our students, and we were doing a list of indirect services, because that's like one of the bridges that we get before we dismiss a child. We keep that support until they're really ready to kind of fly without us and without the extra support. So it's very interesting to watch that, and a lot of it happens around 10th and 11th grade. So I am proud of our high school, and I think what all the teachers do for all of our students is just commendable. So, yeah. So we have another type of exit data. So if you noticed, I put it on there twice. Now, I did include the graduates in this number 83. So we had 83 students exit in some form in Taylor County. So we did have one dropout, and that's just 0.01%. We had 9 move out of state. That was 11%. Now here's where it's going to get a little muddy, okay? They return to regular education, and that is a code that we have to put in there. So that means they could return to the gen ed without any services, right? That's what you want. But also, if they decide to go to homeschool, or if they decide to go to virtual, or if they decide to go to a charter school, that's all under the same code, and it's very difficult to break down. Now, I was able to actually work with Mrs. McCarthy, and I found the 12 out of the 83 that went to homeschool. And then I just kind of was going through some of my communications and looking at some of my data kind of that way, and I found 6 went to virtual. But I will tell you, 2 of those came back. So, but we did have 0.07% on that one. So that's, and I think that's when I say it's muddy, I would have liked to have had a percentage of how many went back into gen ed, right? And how many went to homeschool specifically, but they're not there with that code yet, so.
Ms. Fisher,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna question your math, and I apologize
Probably.
for
Go
doing
ahead.
this. But if 12 out of 83 is 14%, could you please explain how 6 out of 83 is 0.07%?
Probably wrong on my calculator.
Okay.
Yep. I will fix that, thank you.
I appreciate that. I
I
was
was
like,
doing
one
pretty
of those numbers is wrong, and
Yes, it's the
I am
six.
under-caffeinated, so I'm not gonna fix it.
That's
Just-
okay. That's okay. Somebody can get their phone and calculator and help me right now. It's just 7%. Thank you, Mr. Dowdy.
I apologize
all-
for throwing you
No,
under the bus
no.
publicly there.
Hey,
Um,
everybody knows that math is not my forte. So it is 7%, okay? There you go. I really wanted to know if you were listening. Yeah. Is there anything else I can do? So I will bring back some iReady data and the GSA data. Okay. Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
All right, Dr. Stallings, do you have anything else you'd like to share with us?
At this point, I do not. I think the handout I gave you from each of the schools has a narrative on those 3 categories of data reveals, shout out for success, and in case you haven't heard, they've taken the time to bring you a little summary from each of those.
All right.
Can I ask a question real quick
Certainly.
about the superintendent's information? Is there maybe a reason, I know that you had the presenters as part of your superintendent's update, but is there a reason why we don't have their names on the agenda as presenters under your superintendent's updates? Because do we normally? The presenters' name?
There wasn't anything done intentionally. I was just, they had been invited to come and provide their area of
Yeah.
expertise.
But I thought normally we have, under your superintendent's update, don't we normally have who's presenting for each topic?
We typically put that in the minutes at least, and so that's being captured now.
I must be.
We can do a better job
I
of
know
that
that
if you.
if we are specifically looking for someone, or someone is specifically giving us a report, their name is there. Honestly, I would have to go back and look. I have,
Yeah. Okay, that was just.
that is
We-
not a detail that's stuck.
As I mentioned, though, typically, Mrs. Green Hirschman is capturing who's doing what, and those minutes will reflect that.
Okay, that's good.
All right, do you have any board member updates? Board member committee meeting reports? All right, hearing none, we'll move into the 2000 series. Minutes, policies, contracts, and agreements. Superintendent respectfully requests approval of the minutes for the regular meeting on May 20, 2025, and the special meeting June 3rd, 2025.
Moved.
Mrs. Gallo moves.
Second.
Mr. Taylor seconds. Questions? All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. We have a significant number of policies and codes in the first reading. Not quite as many, but still not light reading for policies and codes in the second reading. And 2 policies and codes in the third reading. Superintendent respectfully requests approval of items 2358 and 2359 in the 2000 series.
So moved.
Mr. Taylor moves.
Second.
Mrs. Knott seconds. Questions, comments, concerns?
I do. I know you guys are not gonna like me, because I may end up holding up our third reading. This is where I'm gonna bring up what we discussed a couple weeks ago on board member compensation. I think it might be easier to take a look at, Dr. Stallings, when you were here many, many years ago.
I was very young then, too.
Yeah. Board members used to get paid on a monthly basis. So let's just say, all meetings that were held in October were paid November 15th. All meetings that were held in November were paid December 15th. It was easier to keep track of if however many meetings there were in each month, you got paid for on that following month on the 15th. So once a month you would get a paycheck. Somewhere along the way, when a new superintendent came in, and I'm not sure even which one it was, changed that without really notifying or asking the board. It was just a policy change, and no one really thought any much about it, and it just changed to being paid more on the cycle of what staff was paid. But it's been ever since then, okay, what meetings are we getting paid for? You know, it would be, and I talked to Jonathan, Mr. Dolan, about this a couple weeks ago, and he's like, well, that would be really easy to keep track of board meetings getting paid. So I thought maybe we could consider going back to that, since that was a long time practice that was changed. I don't know even what for, or what the reasoning of was the superintendent at that point. But I thought we could consider that as the way the board gets paid.
You're speaking of the frequency of how?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, now, Mr. Dolan mentioned the only one that he would be concerned of that could be different would be the end of June's, because he would want that one paid before this
We need
year.
to close out the year.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah. So that would be the only concern he would have, but otherwise, Mr. Dolan, if you have any input, that's just something that I considered bringing up to the board.
If I may speak to that, may I? I don't know that I hear this correctly. I'm good with whatever's most convenient for the finance department and your recipient of your receipt of the money. You know, we know that we have those regulations as to how much you're able to get.
Right.
So we can certainly look at that and figure out a cycle, or like when it, I mean, but I just would have to defer to I guess you could just declare when you want those payments to be. At some point, we can make a motion of that nature, Again, I don't want to sound like I don't care, but it really, whatever the pleasure of the board is, as far as I'm concerned, unless there's something specific somebody can cite to me that says, no, it's got to be.
If they all agree to it, you know, it would help clarify, you know, what meetings have been paid for, you know, at what time. So if for some reason, like I said, if you only have 2 meetings in July and I pay you August 15th and you get paid for 2 meetings on August 15th, or, you know, if there's a training in there and everybody gets paid for the training and 2 meetings, and there's 3, you know, it's on there, it's 3 payments. So I think that would help clarify.
You would anticipate that monthly payment is what
Yeah.
I'm hearing. Is that what it?
So,
On the 15th of each month.
and then with the exception of, for example, our next meeting is June 24th, you know, we would make sure that everybody was paid on June 30th. So that if there were just 2 meetings here in June, like I said, that would be the exception.
Then you wouldn't have a July 15th payment?
Correct.
Yeah.
So,
And that'd be because of the end of year closeout.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get one on the 15th and one on the 30th.
If there was
Correct.
anything
well,
due.
your June 15th would be your May payment, and then your June 30th
Oh,
would
yes,
be your,
yes, we'd have June, yeah.
your June payment, so.
The other thing I want to make sure of next year when we move into the next, I don't know. I don't know if this is appropriate.
I'm sorry. The topic again, I was not paying
I don't
attention.
know if
on
I
the
can bring this up or not. You can tell me no, Mrs. Garvin. But the way our agendas are done for each meeting, at the next meeting, to make sure that if we have 2 meetings happening, that we have them on the same agenda. So there's sometimes we have 2 meetings, unless the state says we have to have a separate agenda, which is I think there's only one instance we need to do that for, which is
The levy
Levy,
call-up
right,
leave has to
that
be
one's it.
separate.
But anything else, if we would have, say we, and I'm not a proponent of having, and you guys know this, student,
Expulsion hearings.
expulsion hearings on a night we have a regular board meeting. There's times we have to, right? And if we are, those need to be on one agenda instead of two in a night. I've talked to the state about that. He said you do one agenda and it's on there, and if you need to recess, you recess, but it should be all on one agenda, not an A or an a B, and not two agendas in one night, numbered 39 and 40. Does that make sense?
I think,
Because I think, so we had to go back and we came
Yeah.
back to that calendar meeting piece, and we now understand that that is a single meeting, not
Right.
a 5:30 and a 6
right,
o'clock.
we did
Right.
clarify that.
So that removes that piece entirely, but the only other place we've done that, well, no, because
Well, since our discussion on it, we've had meetings that were numbered. We just had one in the last, not too long ago, that were numbered separate meetings. They shouldn't be numbered. If we're having, there shouldn't be any more than one agenda per night, is what I'm saying, unless it's levy.
Agreed.
I mean,
Now, moving forward, I think I'm going to be adamant that we don't do student expulsions on one night unless it's just absolutely impossible to avoid it.
Sometimes we're forced with the deadline for getting it addressed,
I mean,
of course, but
I've always said that's not really how I feel we should do it, but sometimes we're forced to. So I'll be more cognizant of those things moving forward, but
yeah.
I think we just gotta be careful with that.
So I'm making a notation about the frequency of payments as well as the numbering of agenda. So, and we'll try to work that out.
I'm gonna have to go back and look because,
I don't think either of those affects that policy, however.
No,
either.
I
No,
don't.
I'm not, I think you're correct. It
Yeah.
does not.
I didn't know if we needed to change anything in there based on what I
Since you're
was bringing
speaking
up.
of that particular topic, that's not that's fine.
does anybody object to us changing the pay dates?
We can put it on another topic.
I'm not
agenda.
ready to make that decision tonight. This
Okay.
was just presented to us, so I
Yeah.
need to,
That's fine.
Yeah, that's why I said we can put it on another agenda.
Perhaps I can put it on the next agenda, it's the 88,000 series for discussion.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you. All right. Any additional questions on the open motion for the requesting the approval of 2358 and 2359?
One more thing. Before we put that on the agenda, do you think maybe somebody could go back and do the research on when that changed and if there was any notification or documentation on why it had to be done? I don't know if you'll find it before we make a decision of one way or the other.
I can look at old pay stubs from the past and see.
We can try to investigate that. I cannot promise there'll be any kind of indication when that shifted.
I would think
That-
it's around,
You were referencing my Yesterlife, and I think we've had, 4 treasurers and/or at least that many superintendents since that time?
Yes.
I can probably try to figure it out when it
Okay,
happened.
thank you. Your memory would be very helpful about that.
Okay.
I can tell you
Okay.
at least the superintendent, I think.
Thank you. That alone would be helpful because it could narrow down the minutes.
Right.
Sorry, keep going.
That's all right. We have a motion on the floor. I believe at this point, questions and concerns have been addressed. All those in favor?
Aye.
All, motion passes. Resolved that the bylaws, policies printed and codified in the comprehensive document entitled Bylaws and Policies of Taylor County Board of Education are hereby adopted, and that all bylaws, policies heretofore adopted by the Taylor County Board of Education are hereby rescinded. Further be it resolved that if if, in the event, any policy, part of policy, section of the bylaws is judged to be inconsistent with law, inoperative in a court of competent jurisdiction, or invalidated by a policy or contract duly adopted by this board, the remaining bylaws, policies, and parts of policies shall remain in full effect. I'm gonna get that. I'm gonna be able to do it like they do it on the commercials. All right, we are moving into the agreement section of the 2000 series. There are a number of agreements and contracts, memorandums, and consents.
And these are all for FY '26, beginning that school year, correct?
Correct.
Yes, ma'am.
There's nothing for extended year or anything, right?
No, ma'am.
All right, hopefully we've all caught up to the bottom of that. The superintendent respectfully requests approval of items 3214 through 3266 in the 3000 series.
Wait.
2000? Oh, I'm,
Thank you for trying to.
my bad, it started to scroll. There we go. Apologies, friends. The superintendent respectfully requests approval of items 2360 through 2382 in the 2000 series.
So moved.
Mr. Taylor moves.
Second. I have
Mrs.
a
Gallo seconds. And
clarification.
questions?
I just had a clarification on 2360. Is that not exceed amount includes all three of those positions, correct? Like that's the total for the three, or?
It's the two.
The two. Oh, I
You
was,
did- you
I
did
was
the-
reading
You
that,
did the other three prior,
okay,
previously.
so that's the two,
Yes, ma'am.
okay. Thank you.
I was trying to think what the third one.
Any additional questions?
There's a lot there, huh?
There's a lot there.
That's all.
I'm good.
All right, if there are no additional questions or concerns, we have an open motion on the floor. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Now, the 3000 series, the consent calendar, of which there are also quite a few. I will try to scroll slower here so I don't miss again. I think I hit the button and it like super scrolled. All right. Superintendent respectfully requests approval of items 3214 through 3266 in the 3000 series. Mr. Dowdy moves.
Second.
Mrs. Knott seconds. Questions?
Yeah, 3214, just curious.
Wait, what number?
3214. Flip back to the beginning of the novella.
You may not know the answer to this question, because we don't have 3214. You might know? How many students participated in the previous environmental protection course? I was afraid so. I was just wondering, because that's not like a normal AP course, like AP, English or AP government or. Oh, I'm just curious. I'm not going to hold up the meeting for it, but. Okay.
Any additional questions for this part of the 3000 series?
Any total for the amount of money we're about to spend?
A lot.
Well, the good news is this is over the course of the next year. It's not like next week, so,
And some, it's only if needed and expended, right?
right.
So,
Right
Mr.
around
Dolan,
32
nothing like exceeded greatly or anything that,
Nothing's exceeded, like I said,
Okay.
it's within, what we've spent in the past, with
Okay.
a, yearly increment increase, so,
okay,
I haven't seen, and I've asked was asked the question today about the tariffs and stuff, and I haven't come across any of the items that we've purchased here recently that we've been affected by.
okay, thank
So-
you.
You'll find that these are representative of all the essentials to operate at this point of the year.
All right, at this point, we have an open motion on the floor. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Bringing us to the 4,000 series financial budget supplements and vouchers payable. Mr. Dolan, dazzle us.
Good evening, everyone. Inside your packet, I had, for your approval, some budget supplements. There was a report that I received where there were some items that needed to have some money moved into them just to cover through the end of the year, which is not uncommon, in Fund 11 and Fund 12. And then the last item that was on the budget supplements was a grant that we were awarded from the state for our child nutrition department for $14,000 to help purchase needed kitchen equipment. So that'll be used for whatever the child nutrition department needs in the form of mixers or heating cabinets or something along those lines. So good, more money to spend. In addition to that, you've all received the schedule of checks to be written or that have already been written, to keep our bills current for all the services. And then the last pages are checks that'll be written tomorrow morning upon your all's approval.
May I make a comment about something regarding that, Ms. Garvin, please? It's a positive.
Certainly.
Thank you. Participated in a meeting today, and it was a comment that was made by their architectural firm and the construction company, those kind of discussions we had. And we've been participating in all those things, but I want to acknowledge that as we receive our bills ongoing with regard to construction and the architectural firm, et cetera, that we contract with, that Mr. Dolan is staying on top of that so that there's no wait for the exchange of what we owe them for those incremental payments. And I just want to acknowledge that because it's also true, so I've been told, that not every county acts as efficiently in that regard. And you are to be congratulated because it's on your agenda, but it also keeps keeps the debtors from knocking on the door, and we're staying on top of that. We are to acknowledge the expenditures you're just approving are essential, but we're staying on top of it such that I'm kind of bragging on the county a little bit because it's a nice feeling to hear that not all counties are staying as current on things like that. Just wanted to credit you too, and to thank Mr. Dolan for his work on that too.
Thank you.
Sorry to
Thank you, Mr.
interrupt.
Dolan. That's all right. All right. Superintendent respectfully requests approval of items in the 4,000 series.
Moved.
Mrs. Gallo moves. Mr. Dowdy seconds. Any additional questions? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving us into the 5,000 series. Please note there are 2 adjustments in this section. This is where you made the addendums or the adjustments.
I, for one, am I allowed to speak yet?
Yeah, I'm scrolling and I don't want to miss the bottom, so yes, please.
I, for one, want to take a look at, well, I want to mention a couple things on 5578, clear through 5587. I don't know if anyone is listening that's in that group, but we have Corey Freeman, Renee Salam, Jennifer Roberts, Jeannie Connor, Lori McDaniel, Taylor Hines, Regina May, Eva Robinson, Mickey Foley, and Chad Gray. I'd like to thank those individuals for stepping up to the plate to be able to,
Fulfill that task.
yeah, and I'd like to get frequent feedback beginning the school year on how that's going.
Okay.
The last thing I want any of our staff is to put themselves in a situation that, and remember, we already talked about some things that could happen going from here to there. The last thing I want to do is put our staff, any of our staff, in a situation to where what we're trying to do to keep everyone safe puts us in a different situation that we weren't expecting, right? So I'd like to have frequent feedback from those individuals. First, pat them on the back for stepping up to the plate. And secondly, frequent feedback to us. What's working, what's not working. Maybe it's not working at all. Maybe the whole thing's just not working. I don't know. I know I'd like to hear.
Duly noted.
Yeah.
While we're making comments about these, I'd like to point out the humongous number of unpaid coaches that are listed on here. Kudos to those folks that are willing to volunteer their time without pay for our kids. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You stole
Amen.
my thunder, because that's what I was gonna say. But I'll add to that, for the public, there are 6 pages of just that for, the extracurriculars like that. And some of those individuals are not doing just one sport, 2 sports.
Yep.
And sometimes even 3. So, you know, this county is very, very blessed to have such dedicated, community members that really, you know, because some of them are teachers, but some of them are not, you know, they are truly community members that are, like Mr. Taylor said, donating their time. So I think it's worthy to have a call out for them.
I would also just like to tell you that there are, first I want to commend the coaches also. This has been a chore to try to get them all approved prior to the July 1, so I thank them for getting their certs renewed. As you say, they're volunteers. We still have probably about 10 to 15 that we're still, that are already on the agenda that didn't make this agenda, so no, you'll have a few more still coming out. But for them, we are really only lacking about 4 now that we are waiting on, so we'll be fully staffed once that happens.
And I'm going to tag onto that. Please, I acknowledge Mr. Dolan on his hard work for your financial piece, but please remember that Dr. Decker is very diligent about creating and contacting and confirming and reminding and gathering all this data.
Harassing is what he said.
She says harassing, I say reminding, but she stays to the task.
They're great.
I can't even follow that up. So the superintendent respectfully requests approval of items 5569 through 5711 in the 5,000 series.
Moved.
Mrs. Knotts moves.
Second.
Mr. Taylor seconds. Any additional questions or comments? All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Bringing us into the 8,000 series, the board member discussions and comments. This is an update regarding the superintendent performance evaluation, which we had a meeting on Tuesday, June 3rd, during which we evaluated the superintendent. After a very thorough discussion, I think we all decided we were going to keep him, but we need an official motion to that effect.
Gulp.
Second.
Mr. Dowdy moves. Mrs. Gallo seconds. All those in favor? Aye. And with that, For the paper, during the recent Special Board of Education meeting on Tuesday, June 3rd, 2025, the Taylor County Board of Education conducted the superintendent evaluation and awarded Dr. John E. Stallings, Jr., superintendent, a satisfactory evaluation. Following that successful evaluation and additional discussion, the board agreed to continue Dr. Stallings' current contract that extends through June 30th of 2027. That will be in the paper as per
I was gonna say, we already
policy.
Thank you.
approved that. We already did the contract.
Yeah, we already did the contract part,
Last
but
year,
we,
Just the
we
official
have to
statement.
put the official statement in the paper, so.
Thank you for trusting me to
Yeah.
do my job, and I appreciate the opportunity to continue to do it per your decision. Thanks.
And I appreciate, because we're almost to the end.
Oh.
Anybody else for the 8,000 series?
Yeah, I just
Go
had
ahead.
two things. So I just want to say how nice all the graduation festivities were. And, I know that the high school staff, as well as our central office staff, does a lot of work to make that such a beautiful event. And just congratulate all of our graduates and best wishes on their successful futures ahead of them. So just wanted to thank that and make that point. The other thing I wanted to know if maybe on the next agenda, Dr. Stallings, if we could get a status update on the Flemington concession stand, where we're at with that, because I know that was kind of an urgency whenever that was brought to us, and I know that there were some issues that arose, but I kind of would like to know where we're at with that.
Good point.
I'd like to add, based on the presentation that we heard this evening on the bus garage, I want to make sure in my head that I'm right. When are we going to be utilizing that space? When will we see, I know, I want to make sure I'm right. Is it, we're not going to utilize it this school year? Will we be having to do the renovations and open it next school year?
I think is obviously until we get the tanks there
Right.
and set up for utilization, we won't be able to occupy that space for that.
So it'll
part.
be 2026, 2027 school year that we,
Well, as soon as possible, but that's why he was here tonight, to get that started with the,
okay.
we've been working, Dr. Decker has been working on all this preliminary discussion and proposals as we looked into what's going to cost for certain things like buying the tanks, as well as, okay, so we're going to buy some tanks, where are we going to put them? How are we going to lay it out so it can be a functional, like the island concept for the fueling? Now that is brought to your attention, and we can continue to move forward with that, and by putting it on the agenda for an official.
So we don't know when we will open that facility for usage.
I don't have a timeline for you, other than we are now in the throes of all the planning pieces. Now it's been brought to your attention, and they'll continue to move forward as quickly as possible.
And let's just say, I don't know, maybe I've got too much going on in my mind tonight, too many questions. Some nights I'm quiet, some nights I'm not.
Those nights you're
all
quiet
good.
are not when you're here, honey.
Oh. Boy, she gave me some slappage. No, but would it be possible to open that facility in the middle of a school year with all the other moving parts?
Oh, I would, let me say, without question, as soon as we have that up and running, we should
gonna
be
utilize
occupying it, because we want to, remember, our original goal
we
was to find
spent a
out
lot
how
of
to get
money.
away from the tanks
Yeah.
in the ground.
Right.
We want to get those up too.
And we spent a lot
Yeah,
of money.
we're living on borrowed time with those tanks.
We are indeed, and God willing, it's just going to be a process, not a problem. I hope
Okay,
that's helpful
Mrs.
to your question.
Garvin, if he can be quiet, I can be quiet.
Touche.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that. Any other discussion? Okay, moving to the 9,000 series, the final meeting for this school year is June 24th, 2025, 6 o'clock, here at the board office.
We will be celebrating my wedding anniversary that night, just so you know. And for the record, happy anniversary, Margaret, in 2 weeks.
All right. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Mr. Dowdy moves, Mrs. Knott seconds. All those in favor? Aye. And we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time and your consideration and your questions and opinions and burning brains this evening. Here are 7:45.